come to Texas and visit me. Jess.
Jess.
Yeah. This is Steve Parks. You want to introduce yourself?
Syracuse University.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to talk pretty quickly about the Fwwcp Archive in both print and now digital formats, and then really most of this kind of short time period, we want to get some feedback and then see what the next steps are. So initially, the archive started out. Nick Pollard donated thousands of books from the Fwwcp, which started in 1976, and kind of went and transitioned into the Fed in about 2008, right? And he donated thousands of books to London Metropolitan University, specifically the TUC, or the Trade Union Congress Library. And this was a couple years ago. And since then, Steve and I have both run classes in London for a couple weeks each summer, bringing Syracuse University students as well as other American students to London Metropolitan University to actually start sorting books, to start indexing them, noting who authored the books, who published them, which community groups they came from, which regions. We also created these publications with students and some of you in here, as well as members from the Fwwcp who might no longer be part of the Fed. And so this book, Preserving Hidden Histories, documents kind of the creation of the archive, how it came about. Roy writes a letter about how it came about and why it's designed the way it is, which was really started based on Fwwcp members and the way that they wanted it designed. And then the second book, Steve's class produced last summer, to kind of continue this, working in the archive as well as collecting poems and writing from all of you. So we have those two books. The archive, however, has moved recently. So it was at Holloway Road. Now it's at London Metropolitan University, near the Aldgate East stop. So it's on 25 Old Castle Street, in what's called the wash houses. It's a little bit difficult to find, so I'm hoping we can kind of brainstorm ways of getting people there.
It's in the heart of the East End.
It is in the East End, so. Another thing that's happened, so right now in the archive itself, there's close to 2,000 publications from groups all over England, Wales, Ireland, and they're all in the archive, physically located in there. They've been sorted, they've been indexed. And so that's all well and good, but now we need people to go there and see them and use them. The other thing that's happened in the past year is we've created a digital archive. So this is a website now that, this is just an image, but if you type in fwwcp.gn, this will actually pop up as the website. And so what it includes is project history, an overview of the collection, projects that are involved. You'll see some images of maybe some groups here. The project partners, and what we're most excited about right now is the collection database. Those are friendly faces right there. And these are my students at London Metropolitan organizing the text. So one of the best features about this is the database. And what it is, for instance, you can look up a group.
Presentation is?
Yes. Come on in. Roger, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. So for instance, if you wanted to see if Roger Mills has written anything that might be located at the archive, you can type in Roger Mills, and all of a sudden you get 3 books that he published.
That guy's really good. So.
You can look at the interview.
Good writer.
You can see here the date, author, the region, maybe some themes that emerge in the text, the genre, the publisher, ISBN number, and of course, you know, all of these were input by students and myself, and so there might be some errors, but we're really working on trying to make this as accessible as we can. And then the most exciting thing about this database is that eventually we would like to digitize everything so that when you click on Roger Mills' book, you open it up, and there's a digital version that you can read online if you can't get to London Metropolitan University. And it's all accessible, and luckily we've gotten Roger's approval, I think.
Well, you have now, yeah. No, of course, yeah.
And so the archive is designed, as I said, there's an opening page where it kind of gives people an overview of what the TheFED archive is, the FWWCP. And then you can search by region or theme. So regions, we have London, east of London, Yorkshire, Midlands, and a variety of regions, as well as the themes. Oh, here's the regions. We have themes. There's many of them. They're by no means perfect, for instance. You can look up war. If you're interested in mental health, you could look that up. And ideally, that will kind of render a search of whatever texts we have cataloged in those ways. And as I said, you can search individual people. And we're starting, right now we have about 30 books online that are digitized. But we'd like to get, hundreds of them if possible. But that takes time. And this is one other example of what it might look like. Sally Flood's book, for instance, when you click on the digitized version. And so really, what we want to talk about today, I wanted to show you this, but then we want to talk about two things in particular. The first one is, what would you like to see on the digital archive? So this started as the FWWCP archive, but it also includes the TheFED as it is today. So there's, for instance, Newham Writers anthologies, there's Stevenage Survivors, and so there's current work in there as well. So we want to see, what would you like to see as part of the archive? What can you imagine, like, if someone looks at it, what do you want to see? Do you want to see a timeline, more images? Because this is very much in the beginning. And then the second thing is, what can we do to promote the use of the digital and print archives? And Steve might have some ideas about this. We talked to the librarian at London Metropolitan University, and the real issue with it is getting people to know about this archive. We don't want it to sit in the basement or in the vault somewhere and never be used again. So that's something that I think, Steve, if you want to say something about that.
In the session we were just in, we were talking about how there was a period when, like, Centerprise books saturated the neighborhood, and they were a live part of the conversation. They came from the community, and the community read them. And it would be a real shame if what happens to all these books is they rest in a vault in an archive that the community never has access to again. So part of the digitizing is to sort of let people download if they have the ability to do that. But we're also thinking about ways that we can sort of broaden the interest. I say this all the time regularly. I think the TheFED and FWWCP is like one of the most significant working class writing projects in the past 150 years. It's just an amazing body of work. So Jess and I have been working with professors to learn about it, but we're going to start developing a database of literary festivals, neighborhood festivals across the UK, and seeing how we might be able to get TheFED members who live there to go and sit at a table or to, maybe talk about the group. We're going to look at book festivals, see if we can get people to go to that. DIY publishing, zine publishing, is very popular, but in many ways the TheFED was doing that before it was called zine. So something we started, anybody be interested in being someone who would speak about the TheFED at a public event? Would any of you be interested in finding some of your current old publications and reading them at a book festival? Would you be interested in visiting a public school, going to a university classroom? We want to make it alive to everybody of this generation, and we certainly need your help to do that.
I will say one more thing that I forgot to mention is already the website, we haven't officially launched it. It's just it's sitting there in the world, but we haven't officially said, hey, everyone go look at this website. But what's been really interesting is that we've had probably about 6 inquiries already from people who have said, I was Googling my name and my father's book is published in this archive. How can I get a copy, or how can I see it? Or you mentioned Brick Lane in the East End. I used to live there. where can I read about it? So we have had inquiries about it already where people are interested in this history, they're interested in the writing, and they have connections to the writing. So I thought that's really exciting because we haven't, like I said, we haven't even announced it yet. And then, as some of you know, Centerprise, well, On the Record has just published a history of Centerprise, and they have a lot of new resources and a lot of press about that, and Centerprise is part of the FWWCP. And then Chris Searle, who was a big influence on it, also just published a book. So I feel like there's a renewed energy about this time period and this history, and so kind of locating those intersections and those resources to help us get the word out would be useful. So I guess for the rest of the time, we just want to brainstorm with everyone and see what your ideas are, how it can be improved, and what the next steps are. So any feedback or ideas or thoughts?
Well, I've been sort of intermittently involved with the archive where it was at the TUC building, on and off. And it's really amazing to go there and well, now they've moved. It's really amazing to go there and see them physically. So it'd be good, or an idea might be to, if you had gangs of students or young people with an aged, wise old Federation person who might maybe have a session with them to actually look at the books, talk about the books, because to a lot of these young people, you know, they look amazing because they're not online; they're actually physical entities. So it might be interesting to introduce them to the books and the contents in a sort of workshop type situation. You know, maybe an hour of just talking over why they happened, what's in the books, what the point of it all was, etc.
Anybody would wish to volunteer to do that, you should come up and see me. Because without volunteers, that idea just doesn't happen. And we took both of our students to see Newham writers, and then your students actually met Sally Flood.
Yeah, and then they came to a class 2 summers ago, and then my students also went to a couple Stevenage survivors groups. And if you get the chance to look at this, it's really interesting to see how my students responded. I mean, going to the groups, I mean, they
were really engaged.
Yeah,
they really did get to be part of that process and that group. There's a lot of identification with what we were striving to do.
Yeah. So I think it's a very embodied and tangible experience when they go to the groups, and so it's great to get them out of the archive, but also seeing the texts themselves and meeting all of you and meeting the people who are creating these texts, I think has really been important and impactful.
And we had students from London Metropolitan University read them, and they basically were reading about the streets that they lived in. Seeing the language they spoke in print, and it was Sunny Singh taught the class, and she said it was incredibly powerful for them. To sort of see their history documented. Particularly at this moment. So
students, university students at London Metropolitan and Syracuse and other schools are reading these texts and finding them interesting, and of course the classes have gone well. So it is exciting, but we need to continue that, and I think really find ways to get people to participate in the UK right now.
It's a different thing, but a friend of mine she runs the website and all the sort of social media thing for UEA's music events. So they have this sort of a cut-off point from when they refused to stage the Sex Pistols. So all that time they had all these kind of music concerts, and she's sort of getting all this interest and all this interaction, because what it is asking for people to send in their memories. So she's archiving the memories of people's reactions to the event, what they were doing, what was going on in their lives at the time. So I wonder whether, in a way, it's not just about the book, but what book meant to people at the time, maybe, who was involved with the production of that book, maybe, all the stuff around it, is so interesting. And when you ask people questions about, can you remember, can you tell us, we're really looking to sort of find this stuff out, then you get so much reaction. I mean, she can't really handle it all by herself, because it's just so much material, and I wonder if maybe a call out like that might get the people sort of into it.
My mum was asked a couple of years ago to remember her time in Portsmouth, growing up in Portsmouth during the war. And you know, students from the local university came out and interviewed her, and quite a few other people. We bumped into someone recently. She said, "Oh yes, they came and interviewed me." And so I have never followed it up to see what they've actually done with it. But I will do that. I will. Next time I'm down there with her, I'll follow that up and see if I can make some links, connections with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
For all saints. Yeah. But it's true that you ask people about their memories and they just come forth. Yeah, it really does.
I think we have pretty much a unique opportunity to use a history not in a historical way, to create a new future, not just for the organisation whose history it is, namely the TheFED, but for a whole generation of people that know nothing about it, because the archive is a thing of absolute beauty. And anyone who fancies themselves as a reader of quality is well advised to look in it, because there's amazing stuff in it. It will need a lot of hard work from all of us if we're to push it forward, because this is a small organisation, it's relatively unknown, but the contacts are there. And yes, we need to get to universities and schools, colleges, to impress young people, because they're the ones who are the future, and they're the ones who are going to carry this thing forward with our help, any help that we can give them. And we already have a heady mix of higher education and people who've never been educated, which is one of the most beautiful combinations that you can possibly ever have. So we have the raw material in every sense, and it's just the hard work that we do. I agree with Steve. Go take it to festivals, take it to colleges, take it to universities. Again, it's hard work, but someone has to do it. I am quite happy to be one of the people who does that. And I have sent a small amount of TheFED archive material to a person who may or not be able to help further this forward movement. But even if he can't do anything directly, he should be able to give me advice on how to move forward myself. And it has occurred to me that I could possibly get some local funding to run a day of community creativity, which would include readings from the archive. The therapy day as well, yes, but this would be a separate thing dedicated to something which can be a vehicle for the archive, because it has such an immense potential as both a therapeutic and an educational mechanism. And it wouldn't be a waste even if it never gets used, because it will be collected and it will be there. But we can make it come alive. And it would be a shame not to, after all the hard work that you guys have put into it. And we can do it.
Well,
We've just got to make the effort.
I'm actually in the part of London my mother was born and lived till she was about 25 when she moved to Baldock. And she lived in Holborn in a place called Red Line Passage, and I don't even know if that still exists. They had a double-fronted antique shop that was bombed in the war, and my aunt left with just is it still here? Red Line Passage.
Red Line Square is still here.
Probably is where it was then.
Because now this is more the city, isn't it? But when my mother lived here, it was quite, people lived differently. I'd like to find out perhaps what sort of
Well, I
she
think
lived
that
in
there's
there.
still quite a few people living in those flats over there. I don't quite know what they're like. I think they're council flats.
That's a
aren't
long
they?
time ago, because I'm 67 now. 69, sorry, and like 70 years ago I'm talking, or even more.
I work and live in the East End of London. There's an archive library next to Mile End Hospital, and they have a lot of photographs and whether you should be putting...
Excuse me, could you speak up a bit? I can't hear you.
I said I live and work in the East End, and I work sometimes in Mile End Hospital, and right next door there's an archive library about the East End, and maybe you want to get in touch with them to maybe do a partnership with them, because they've got all the photographs of the docklands, the areas that the people were writing in. They do, on the weekends, they do presentations of films and with going back in history. They rescued some film footage of the docklands in the 70s, and they did a presentation, and they got the people that were in that video all grown up to attend. So that would be quite a nice link to this
And so, for
archive.
instance, if someone, from the Fed could go to the festival and present even a 5-minute thing about...
I'm close by, so I'll
Yeah.
be willing to do that.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. What's the archive called?
It's just the archive
Bancroft
library.
Road Library.
Bancroft Road.
Hamlet. I think it's just called Hamlet's Archive.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
whatever, isn't it?
Isn't there somewhere called East Side Community Heritage? Should we similar sort of thing as well?
I can't think where they are, it's just brainstorming.
I think the TUC has a Toll Puddle Martyrs Day in Dorset, There's lots of displays and Union banners and things there. So it might be a good context for the TED.
Yeah,
archival.
absolutely. It's already a part of the TUC library, but if there's an event going on as part of the TUC, that would be a great link.
Yeah, it's sort of a major day in the year.
Yeah.
The Docklands also have a museum at West, do you know where the museum is? West Ferry Road or West? It's a naval museum. It's all about the docks and the London waterways. So I don't know if that's a connection.
I actually had an aunt that was a money lender, and aunt now, she lent people money and made interest on it as well. Quite a bit of history around here.
I'm on the management group of the Feminist Library, and a lot of the other women that I work with are of a much younger generation. I think there's a lot of possibility there, because that's a bunch of people who are really interested in making connections across generations. And in fact, we're going to be having our summer fair in August. So if you fancy coming and doing a workshop there, that would be really brilliant.
Where is it?
It's by Lamberton Tube Station.
The Feminist Library?
Yes, the Feminist Library. We are not the Women's Library, for anybody who's thinking. We were kicked, we've been in danger of being kicked out, but they were actually kicked out of London. So that was one thought. And then I had a couple of other thoughts sort of coming out of that. There's the Alliance of Radical Booksellers, who have got their book fair at Goldsmith on the 24th of June, and you might still be able to get a stall there if you talk to them nicely. And then just that chap talking about the Toll Puddle Martyrs. I mean, the other place quite similarly fair to that, I can't remember the exact name of it, but in Norfolk, the Strike School, they have a festival.
Burston Strike School.
Burston Strike, that's it. So that could be another place. getting out to meet people.
Yeah, thank you. That's so one of the things that when you were talking, it made me think of, you know, for people interested in, there's, so the theme it would be about women, but you can look in the archive about women talking about what it means to be a feminist, and there's stories of the suffragettes, and so people can even research that online if they're interested in making connections across generations. And there's some huge debate about, you know, feminist versus women's groups, and the whole history of that is in this archive.
That would be really interesting to have somebody come and chat about that.
Yeah.
Also, you know, like there was a whole history of women's activism between the suffragettes and the women's liberation movement.
Absolutely.
You know, and I thought some of the women who wrote to you, Martha, has been involved in some of that stuff. That's really, really interesting.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that.
And also, Lucy Parker, who's not here today, she's made several films, hasn't she?
Yeah.
And I think one of them was focusing on the women in the Fed. So I don't know if they will be available to be shown or presented in any way. Because I'm not sure how widely she's circulated them.
Right. Yeah.
So it might work getting in
I'll
touch with
take a
her.
look at it.
There's a place called Bishopsgate Institute in Gloucester. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
They're really good. They're social history, you know, socialist history stuff. It's got really good archives.
Yeah, one of the things that we were talking about yesterday with the librarian is, you know, Bishopsgate puts on events all the time. Unfortunately, because Steve and I live in the States, and we can't come
Which is
over here.
unfortunate right now.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
But if there's members here that, you know, if we have pamphlets and books and maybe like a you know, a short presentation that someone could give, you know, at Bishopsgate one time where it's about publishing or about community work or about a specific genre or a theme of writing, I think that's how we're hoping to get out, because Bishopsgate's already, they have huge events. You can link into that network. I think it would be really helpful.
So Jen, we have a grant for a student to spend the summer developing a database of places that the Fed materials could be used, or Fed people could visit or give a talk, and also to digitize more of the books. So a lot of what you suggest, we're going to write down, develop this database, and hopefully once it's there, we can call upon you to sort of go to these events. It's hard to sort of feel in this room, which is sort of an antiseptic, slightly corporate university classroom, but the new generation of people doing zines see you as the folks that taught them what it would mean to do a community-based political zine. Like, they find you important. We'd have to figure out how to get you in touch with them so they can see the great work that you produced. And the database and people volunteering is one of the ways we hope to do it.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty much out of
Yeah.
time, but
Let me say one thing. Before you leave, I do this when community organizing. You all have pieces of paper and pens. If you're willing to be somebody who will go to an event and speak about the Fed, write your name and your email
or if you
on
know
a piece of paper.
an event happening, please write that down. Or if you know a particular, maybe like a theme or a topic that you know an event would be interested in, a presentation, that would be really, really helpful.
So name, event, and maybe you know a digital site that could link to this site. If you put those three pieces of information down and set them on that table there, it will be brilliant. And it will help everybody begin to see what you guys all produced.
Can you put the archive for a second?
Yeah.
And I think we're done. You're saying we're wrapped up, right, Jess?
So this is the archive address.
The physical...
Oh, the archive, the physical address.
That's one,
Just before we go, I'm not really adding any ideas, but I used to work for an organisation called Survivors Poetry, which is a charity set up to promote and publish poetry by survivors of mental distress. The organisation itself has become distressed and has shrunk and shrunk, and they have an archive which they need to house, and they would be more than happy to add it to the FED archive.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So I will sort out with them and somehow get it over to its new home. Okay.
One last thing. If you gave writing last year to be in this book, I brought copies to give to people. So please pop up. I have a copy for you. And then we have both books for £1.